Hello, everyone. I'm Abby Gondek, the Morgenthau Scholar in Residence at the FDR Presidential Library and Museum in Hyde Park, New York. And I am going to speak to you today about the Henry Morgenthau Jr. Diaries and the War Refugee Board Papers and how to navigate them and how I use them for my research. So my role as the Morgenthau Scholar in Residence is part of the Morgenthau Holocaust Collections Project, which is a digital history and pathfinding initiative to raise awareness of the FDR Library's unique but underexplored resources related to Holocaust studies. So in the last video, which was an introduction to Henry Morgenthau Jr., the Henry Morgenthau Jr. Holocaust Project, and my role, I began to talk about the Henry Morgenthau Jr. Diaries. So in this video, I'm going to expand upon that a little bit more. So when I say diaries, these diaries are not traditional or typical diaries. They are instead a day-to-day log of everything that happened in the Treasury Department, not just related to refugees, but overall, everything that happened in the Treasury Department. So it includes, for example, phone conversations, meeting transcripts, memos, correspondence, any type of paper documents that went through the Treasury Department. For my role, I'm specifically interested, of course, in Holocaust-related documents, specifically things related to refugees, and especially Jewish refugees, and also anything related to the War Refugee Board, once the War Refugee Board was created in January 1944. So this is the landing page for the Henry Morgenthau Jr. Diaries. It can be accessed through Franklin, which is the search database of the FDR Library. And it's important to note that the way that this is set up is exactly how you would find it if you went into the research room at the FDR Library. So it gives you a really great experience of what it would be like to actually be in the research room, because this is organized in the same way as you would find it in real life. So it's maintaining what is called the original archival context, which is very important. So the Morgenthau Diaries are organized into bound volumes, which I had mentioned in my previous video. So I wanted to show you a picture. So this is from the Morgenthau Project homepage. And here's an image of what the bound diaries look like. So there are 864 of these. Each one covers several days. And each one has a table of contents, which I'll show you in a little bit. And there are also index cards which help you to navigate through the 864 volumes. And of course, the index cards were created, as I mentioned in my last video, by Henrietta Klotz, who was Henry Morgenthau Jr.'s secretary, as well as the Treasury librarian, Isabella Diamond. So this is a picture of one of the index cards under the category refugees. And then these are subtopics and you can find them in volume 688. And these are the page numbers you can find them in. So there are 3 series of the Henry Morgenthau Jr. diaries. There are the diaries themselves, the presidential diaries, and the index. The index is made up of index cards by category, like I was showing you before with refugees. And these are scans of each index card is put into a PDF. So they're batches of index cards. And what I'm going to talk more about right now is the diaries themselves. So here they're listed by volume. And so this is what you would see if you went into the research room and you were wanting to look at a volume of the Henry Morgenthau Jr. Diaries. So from my previous video, when I was talking about Henrietta Klotz, I showed you a specific document that indicated how influential Henrietta was on Henry Morgenthau Jr.'s stance regarding refugees, rescue and relief of refugees. So this particular document is on page 89 of volume 688, part 2. So I actually wanted to show you how to find that. In my blog post, which I'm looking at right now, this is the link to the PDF, but I wanted to show you from the diary homepage how to find that. So I would scroll down all the way to volume 688, part 2, which is right here. Here it is. And I will click on that. I already have it opened up. So we're going to go to page 89, which I was almost at, but not quite. And this is the beginning of the meeting, the Jewish evacuation meeting. So you would be able to read the entire meeting if you wanted to. And the page that I selected is page 89. And then here, Mrs. Klotz says, Morgenthau, none of these people you mentioned, when they are put on the spot, will do what you will do. And she's talking about the importance of him going to talk to the president about saving refugees. So in order to find documents related to Henrietta Klotz or any other specific person who was part of Henry Morgenthau Jr.'s staff, one of the things that I did was that I used a spreadsheet, which was created by Dr. Dottie Stone, who was a previous Morgenthau Scholar in Residence. And she created an amazing resource of this Excel database that includes documents in the Morgenthau Diaries related to refugees, and they are labeled based upon the volume, the date, page numbers, and then people who were involved and topics that were involved in these different documents. And so I used that to identify documents that were related to Henrietta Klotz, as well as I was doing research for a specific research project that's now become an exhibit, which I'm going to talk about in future videos, related to the rescue of Jewish children from France and getting them into Spain and Portugal. So when I was looking for specific countries, I was also looking for mention of children and for mention of Henrietta Klotz, because I already was really interested in her, because I'd read about her influence on Henry Morgenthau Jr. And I wanted to find more evidence of that. I wanted to also mention that you can do a text search of words in each of these PDFs, which is something you wouldn't be able to do if they were just paper documents. The fact that they're digitized, it does allow you to do word searches. Although the searchability, because of these documents were written with old style type, sometimes the text searches don't find everything, but it's a great start. So for example, if I typed in the search term Klotz, and then there are 43 mentions of her name, so I could use these arrows to go through and find all the mentions of her name in this particular PDF. And then I would need to do the same for any other PDFs that I was looking at. So the next thing that I wanted to show you was, in addition to the Henry Morgenthau Jr. Diaries, the War Refugee Board Papers, which has been another main resource that I have used. This is the landing page. You can also find this through Franklin. I'm at box 46. That's the one that I want to show you. So again, this is like the original archival context that you would find if you came into the research room. And the specific document that I wanted to show you from the War Refugee Board, box 46, the exhibit is about the conflicts between two Jewish organizations, the World Jewish Congress and the Joint Distribution Committee, regarding where to send the children who were coming out of France into Spain and Portugal, whether they should be sent to Palestine or whether they should be sent somewhere else. So as part of this research and exhibit, here's John Paley right here. He was the director of the War Refugee Board. There is a document that I wanted to show you. This is Cordell Hull, the Secretary of State. So this is a cable number 1229, and it is from John Paley, the director of the War Refugee Board, to Robert Dexter, who was the War Refugee Board representative in Portugal. And they are discussing the issue of the conflict between the World Jewish Congress and the Joint Distribution Committee, and specifically between the leaders of these two organizations in Portugal. So Weissman for the World Jewish Congress and Joseph Schwartz for the Joint Distribution Committee. And in a future video, I'm going to explain much more about this exhibit and this conflict. But I wanted to show you how you can go about finding this specific document in the War Refugee Board Papers. So this is from, as I said, box 46, folder 15. So when you open up the folder, this is what the actual folder would look like. This is what it's called. And this is much like what you would do if you were in the research room. So the War Refugee Board Papers are not bound into volumes, and they don't have page numbers for the most part, the way that the Morgenthau Diaries do. So it is a little bit tougher to navigate through it because of that. And it involves a lot more searching like you would do if you were in the research room and this was a paper folder with documents inside of it. So I wanted to show you the cable number 1229, which I've put into the search box here. And it's this third one here. So this is the same document. And in order to find this, I did a lot of searching through the folders in the War Refugee Board Papers that seemed relevant to the topic that I was interested in. And was through doing word searches, I was able to find these different documents that I used for my exhibit. So in a future video, I'm going to talk more about a part of my exhibit and show you some of the pages and documents that I've created to illustrate the conflicts between the two Jewish organizations that I mentioned, as well as the conflicts between the State Department and the Treasury Department about issuing a license to the Joint Distribution Committee so that they could operate in enemy territory and provide relief and rescue to Jewish children who were trying to get out of France and into Spain and Portugal. So I look forward to seeing you then, and thank you so much for listening.